Welcome to Clienting, your place to get information about legal marketing and client development. This is Kelly Street, Marketing Director for Attorney Sync.
And this is Tsakalakis, one of the founders of Attorney Sync.
Hello, Tsakalakis.
Hello, Kelly Street.
Today is such a great day. I mean, it always is when we record a podcast, but today is a special day in my place because there is a yogi lawyer that we get to talk to. And I haven't talked about my passion for yoga on the podcast yet, but I will get to a little bit today. And that is so exciting.
Yeah, I'm very fired up. Today, we have PatBot, who is very inspirational in many ways to me. I most recently had the good fortune to watch him present with Cleo's Jack Newton at the Avo Lawyeronomics Conference and was blown away by all of the different data that they're collecting and using to put to work to provide better experiences for their clients and to reach new clients. And so that's what I wanted to talk to Patrick today. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, people of all everything, PatBot, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, that's quite an introduction. Thank you very much for that. And it's really an honor to be on your show. So my name is PatBot. I have a workers' compensation firm in Tacoma, Washington. I am a smaller practitioner who has my feet firmly planted in the future and doing my absolute best to drag my firm along with people like me into a place that meets the future head on and is prepared for all that's coming to bring our entire profession into a better place.
Yes. And listeners today, this is one to really pay careful attention to because, all of our episodes, we try to, really do our best to bring on forward-thinking people in terms of client development, whether it's the information age, digital age, future, whatever you want to call it. But Patrick has really embraced this, as you're going to see. And, going back to starting from this Avo talk, maybe just starting with the overview, kind of the premise of what you guys are doing. The short buzzword answer is you have a database that's collecting a bunch of information. And I don't necessarily want to get into all of the specific details of what you're collecting, but how you're doing that and how you're using that to create client experiences and how you're communicating that with your next clients. Maybe just a short, brief overview that in your own words.
Well, we termed it Moneyball law after the movie, right? So in the movie Moneyball, a guy who's a statistician decides that they can look at all of the baseball players that are there around the country and try to find statistically the players that would fit into a team that could be purchased for the smallest possible dollar and create the most amazing team that maybe could win the World Series, right? And so this idea of taking data analytics and using them to create a law firm that can maximize all of its potential and to find the ways to best serve its clients with the least amount of money spent is kind of that theme of Moneyball. But the other piece is not just collecting analytics for practicing law at the moment. It's about practicing law for the future and turning what can be any everyday analytics that you collect right in front of you, things that are happening in your office, and turning those into predictive analytics so you can make better choices in the future. So it really is our concept of Moneyball law.
Man, I love that because I know there are a lot of lawyers out there that are like, that sounds amazing. Patrick, is your background in data science?
I wish it were. It's not.
Mine neither.
I'm a musician. Originally, I ended up going into business school and then into law. I wish I had more marketing, statistics, analytics in me. I am learning this as a second career.
Got it. So for the lawyers that are out there that are like, that sounds awesome. How do I do this? I don't know how to do this. What are a couple quick things you can point them in the direction of, whether it's learning themselves, looking for help? What are the types of questions, the types of resources that folks should be going to get started in this kind of stuff?
Well, can I start with maybe an example? And yeah. It can certainly grow, but sometimes when you just put something solidly in place, it helps make more sense. So we used to take in new clients, and I have a plaintiff's workers' compensation firm. So, folks call all the time, and we used to write them down on a piece of paper, and then the receptionist would run up to one of the lawyer's office and say, Steve Smith on line 2, will you take the call? And then we would take handwritten notes. Well, that was a disaster. I mean, it was the hardest way possible to do that, and it didn't give us any analytics to go from. So we ended up taking a what we call a potential new client, or a P&C sheet that we are using. And we created one using Google Sheets. And so all the questions we ask are shorthanded on the Google Sheet with drop downs. So if we wanted to know what the injury was, I click the drop down and it gives me most of the major body parts, right? If I want to know who the employer is, there's a drop down. If I want to know, whether they're working or not working, there's a drop down. And so we collect about, I'm going to say, 30 pieces of data on anybody that calls in. All of those individual data points go into a database where they're held. And frankly, when we started this, we didn't know which pieces of data were going to be critical and which ones were not. We just threw everything in there. And as time has progressed, we realized that this really was a goldmine, because this was telling us so much information about our clients, particularly the ones that we wanted to accept, and then about the eventual outcomes of their case. So we started throwing in all the data we were collecting along the way, from the day we took them in to the day we finished the case. And then we sent all this data over to Suffolk Law School, over to David Calaruso, and said, David, can you help us create algorithm that will use all this data and tell us which cases we should take and which cases we shouldn't take based on the history of cases that we've already taken in and the outcomes we know that come from those cases? And so we did. And so on our intake sheet, we have what looks like a number of from 0 to 100 that will tell us whether we should take the case or not take the case. 100 means take the case. 90 says take the case. 80 says probably take the case. 60 says, I don't know, it may not be a great case to take. 10 says don't take that case. 0 is definitely don't take that case, right? And it uses the data that we've collected over the last 18 months to determine which cases we should or shouldn't take. Now, this is going to play itself out over the next 3 years, so that when we know each case was taken in, what the outcome was, how long it took us to get there, what was the dollar value, did we have to litigate it, were there problems, or was it quick and fast and easy? And that will continue to build that analytic about the cases that call in. So in 3 years, when someone calls in, we'll have a full database, and we'll know after 5 minutes of conversation, asking questions, not only should we take that case, but what the outcome of that case is going to be, how long it's going to take us, what it may cost us to take that case. And that helps us really predict consistency with everybody who takes the intakes in our office, and helps us really pick the best cases and the cases that we're most likely to be successful in.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that is beyond incredible. So I'm guessing that using this algorithm, this is both to help you and to help potential clients, because if you don't think that you can get a satisfactory outcome at the end of a case, the client isn't going to be happy either. Am I right?
That's right. I mean, I'm here to succeed. And I tell people when I'm talking to them on the phone that I'm going to take your case when I know that I can move you forward, when I can get you something you're not going to be able to get on your own. Otherwise, I'm just dashing your hopes, wasting your time, wasting your money, and trying to push you somewhere that's not going to happen. That's unique perhaps to the plaintiff's PI and workers' compensation arena. If I were in family law, I could probably take every case that called as long as you're willing to pay me. So it's a little different model, but you could still use those same sort of analytics to tell you which cases are going to be the better cases. The shorter outcomes, the longer outcomes, right? Those kind of things.
The other thing that I might use that data for is thinking about how I want to tailor what we're doing, publishing,
That's right,
networking, all the things that we're doing from a client development standpoint, to really zero in on the people that we know are going to make those 96, 97, 98 scores.
Yep, that's right. It turns out that when you collect like every keystroke that comes into your office and everything that every lawyer and paralegal is doing in your office, you get this big database of stuff. And it seems like every week we're pulling something else out of it and saying, oh, here's your relationship, or here's some good data we need, or we need to transform this into a chart so we can watch it. And all of this data just seems to be getting more and more valuable to us. I'm so glad if I have a piece of information, piece to share, advice to share with people, It's collect everything. You never really know what you're going to need. Just put it all in there, because when a year goes by or 2 years goes by and you say, I wish I had some trend line on that. Boom, it's already there. You didn't know why you were keeping it, but it's already there.
Okay, so you are taking all this data and it's eventually going to help. You said in about 3 years, kind of that's the plan for how long all of this stuff will take to really know whether any of it's working. What things have you tweaked already based on the information you've got? Not just the scoring, but what else are you doing? Like you kind of brought up different marketing practices. What else are you doing based on this info?
Yeah, there's so many pieces that come in that are important when you collect data everywhere that you can. So we created a chat bot. We call it the PatBot, right? And it's there for anyone to come into our website 24/7 and find out about their case, have the issues analyzed. It opens up so that if you want to take action on any one of the issues, you push a button and it tells you the DIY how to do it. And so maybe that's a separate conversation. But to answer your question, Kelly, what we're doing from that PatBot is collecting all of the data that people input. So we know what issues are more common, where people are having the biggest pain points. And by collecting all that and really following what's happening with all the people that are using the PatBot, after hours or during hours or whenever they want, it really informs us how we should be marketing, right? What are the biggest issues people have? What are their pain points? How do I need to talk about those issues when we're on the radio or on Facebook or Instagram, whatever else we're putting out information? And so by collecting that data, it helps immediately create a better marketing plan, so I'm really addressing the people that need me the most.
That is so fabulous. So what kinds of things does the PatBot ask that give you guys those indicators of whether they're both a good fit or whether you can even take the case?
Right. Well, so to be clear, that the PatBot isn't a mechanism that culls cases to identify which ones I want. It really is purely a DIY tool. So there isn't any link to me unless someone specifically wants to call and chat with me, right? And we give that as an option to people. So if they want legal advice from a lawyer, they can call. Otherwise, they can do it all on the chatbot or the PatBot. But if people do happen to call me, right, then we're linking this so that all the information that they filled out on their chatbot comes to me on my screen. So when I take the call, I already know what their issues are. I already know how far they've gotten, what's going on in their case. And we start the conversation, 20 minutes down the road from where we would if it was just a cold call and they said, let me tell you about my case. So it's another way to give better customer service, to have a more seamless interaction with our clients and our potential clients. So we've given them value for nothing on the chatbot. And when they call, we're already ahead of the game with what's going on. And then we can move forward and really get to the nuts of their case and try to find solutions if I can help them.
Very cool. So for folks that might not be familiar, like chatbot is like a thing they don't even, it's not even on their periphery. Let's kind of walk through some basics. So the chatbot lives on your website.
It does.
And there's like you click something to prompt to open it up. And what technology is that? Did you work with like a bot creator?
We did. And I have to put a big shout out to LawDroid, Tom Martin. He is so good at this stuff. It's been a really good partnership with him. I had to work out, how do you take 350 statutes and 100 years of case law and turn it into a few minutes of questions to really get to the heart of every case? That was my brain power. And it took quite a number of airplane rides back and forth across the country of just 4 hours at a time, really, deep diving into that to come up with it. But once I came up with a flow chart that analyzed an entire body of law, then he simply turned it into this chatbot or this PatBot that is a cute little alien-looking creature that people can have a conversation with and get their case analyzed.
See, I love this stuff too, because there's so many different levels of this story that I love. But one example, so for lawyers that are out there that are like, they're scared of this technology stuff, they think chatbots are replacing lawyers. This is such a great example of, look, folks, the bot here is not replacing Pat's knowledge. It's providing a DIY solution. So it's helping serve maybe a gap in access for folks that needs information they can do themselves. And it's not replacing Pat, right? Pat is mapping his knowledge to make that available to people through the bot, but but also for folks that are beyond the pale of the DIY stuff, it becomes an avenue for them to connect with him. So, we hear so many conversations. I know, Pat, you're involved in a lot of the leadership and conversations around this issue. And so, maybe you can speak to that, how you kind of think about that AI intermixing. But to me, this is such a great example of using technology to help people get answers. And it's not a death of lawyers, it's a meld.
Yeah, if I could pick the word of the day would be leverage, right? All the technology is simply a set of tools to better leverage the scope, efficiency, effectiveness, and quality of work that I can do every day, right? So if I can take something that's an AI tool or a machine learning tool, or I can take some trend line through analytics, if I can take the data that I can make it predictive, or an algorithm that I can use to do a lot of work that used to be done manually, and leverage all of that in to being faster, smarter, more efficient. That's not a threat. That's a huge opportunity. Yeah, the lawyer, right, is just that urban myth. It's ridiculous. And I think all of these tools are just huge springboards for us to begin carving away at the access to justice gap and creating better, smarter firms that can do more work for less cost and better service to more people.
So, Patrick, on the element of access to justice, I think one of the most important things that you guys are doing with incorporating this technology is, access to justice can be thought about in a few different ways, but one of the things that I think about is breaking down barriers so that people feel like they can either find some answers for themselves or feel like they're not totally in the dark. And so they can get an idea of what maybe their case will be worth, or with PatBot, get somebody that they can talk to. So it doesn't feel as scary of just like, oh, I'm just calling this big, scary law firm that, they went to school for 10 more years than I did. What do I know? That's kind of one of the things I think of when I think about the stuff you're doing.
That's a lot of law school, by the way.
Well, I'm thinking of somebody who maybe didn't go to college and didn't go to law school. So 7 years more schooling.
Okay. 10-4.
Just the different level there that can be perceived when someone is, a construction worker who maybe, like I said, maybe didn't go to college and had an injury and think they're going to contact a lawyer and have all of this jargon thrown at them. And the way you guys are using technology is really breaking that down. So people can get answers without having to feel like an idiot.
That's right. And let me just change that thought just a little bit and say this, that I think it has always been kind of the old school idea about access to justice is that we all have to volunteer and do pro bono work. Like we should give money to pro bono and volunteer legal services, and we need to chip away at that access to justice gap that is out there and help people get access who wouldn't otherwise. And I'm all for that, and that's great. But I think everyone has realized that that is just a small piece of the pie, and that we're just never going to get 1.6 million lawyers to volunteer enough to to bridge that access to justice gap. And so we need to look at so many other methods to get the opportunities out to people where they can get either, simple information, or they can get 15 minutes with a lawyer, or they can get unbundled legal services, or they can have a DIY program like the chatbot, or the kind of things like forums that are being provided by lawyers or by LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, right? So this whole concept of what access to justice means really is evolving. And the exciting part about it is that I think people are finally grasping that there is this enormous market, and some people talk in terms of a latent market that may be upwards of $350 billion of legal revenue that is being left on the table because we're not reaching out to grasp it. So as much as I have always spent the time saying be altruistic and reach out and help people and volunteer your time, I think today we can say really solidly, like, this is a business model that if you can expand your practice to bring in these people who otherwise couldn't afford you by bringing down costs, by leveraging technology, not only do you help bridge that gap and give access to people who didn't have it before, but it's a really profitable business model, right? We can win-win here. Everybody wins if they want to go down that road.
Yes, I preach give information and you will get so much back. You will get more clients, you will get happier clients, you will get referrals from other lawyers who maybe see the things that you're promoting and talking about and know that while a case may not be a good fit for them, it could be a good fit for you. I mean, there's just so much that comes with giving and being upfront and being open with your marketing and everything that you're doing and putting out in the world.
Yeah, no, agreed. And can I add one more piece to that? It's a very big piece, but I'll just put it in a couple of words. There's this idea that we can try to bridge this gap and try to make better livings and try to make our firms more profitable, acting within the RPCs, within the model rules that we all are forced to live in to protect our monopoly and our interests. But the other side of that is that I really think that so many of our rules of ethics, our RPCs, may have been created with good intent, right? To protect the consumer. The reality is today they've turned into absolute handcuffs that silo us outside of the rest of the business community and the rest of companies and opportunity. And we are protected ourselves into a market that no longer works for us, while the rest of the world provides legal services using the modern rules, right? So this idea that if we can break those handcuffs and modify our rules and give us the opportunity to be the kind of business people and get investment and share fees and partner with tech companies, right? And really leverage would change the entire face of what access to justice looks like and open up the doors for lawyers to be successful.
Wonderful. Let's shift a little bit. And I want to talk about the actual things that you guys do at Palace Law for marketing, besides the kind of access and opening doors for people. You do some radio interviews that are pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we do.
How did those come about? How were you able to make those relationships and be able to do that?
It came from a simple philosophy, which is lawyers are way too uptight and always sound like talking heads from a professor's point of view. And I didn't want to be that kind of lawyer, never have. I'm a blue collar lawyer. I'm a blue collar guy. I work with injured workers, and I wanted to be accessible and real. And so I didn't want to, put this sales job on anybody and call me now at 1-800. It was just like, I'm going to give them information they need. I'm going to give them some value. I'm going to talk to them like everyday people, like I'm an everyday guy. And we're just going to have these conversations on the radio. And so every ad we've done for the last 10 years, I think, really is just a conversation with me and one of my buddies who's a DJ. We just chat about stuff in real life terms and sometimes even do a little bit of a cussing and making fun of things. And just, it's all like you're having a beer somewhere at a bar with your friends and having that kind of discussion. And for me, that breaks down some of these walls that separates, lawyers and non-lawyers, right? We're just all people trying to solve problems. And here's some ideas how I can help you solve yours.
I love that. And it fits so much. I mean, that is your brand. You're that guy. And we had Julie Tolick on one of our earlier episodes of clienting, and she had kind of the same perspective of just, I'm a human. My clients are humans. So let's just be humans, and we don't have to have all of this stuffiness around brand and the client-lawyer relationship. Of course, there are ethical boundaries, but
except for where Julie gets to wear pink, I probably listen to heavy metal louder than I should and walk around with a fishing pole. That's probably more our
all
shtick.
things pretty great. So Patrick, with your scorecard that you guys are using, tell us more about that and the analytics of that.
I think one of the critical parts to running a successful law firm is having a management team, or at least having management meetings. We are talking about how to run your law firm. And one of the critical parts to that is having a strategic management scorecard. And people will call it a balanced scorecard. It's something that was made by Robert Kaplan and David Norton. And we've taken this whole scorecard concept. And it's also one, I have to say, and shouting out to Lawyerist, they've put together a really amazing scorecard. You can take an online questionnaire and it helps evaluate your firm so you know how it is you're doing managing your firm. In my firm, we have a similar scorecard, and we've taken 30 different sets of KPIs and put them onto one big dashboard that really is our scorecard of critical pieces of our firm that tell us how we're performing, right? So, in the economy, we may look at housing starts as an example to find out how you're doing. We will look at things like new client calls that are coming in, or how many cases we're taking in, or how much revenue we brought in for that week. We'll look at the productivity of everybody in our office. How many cases they review? How many calls have they taken? How many times do they put notes into Clio? We use Clio. And we found that looking at things like how many notes they put in and how many calls they've taken correlate with their net promoter scores. Everybody, we send out net promoter score questionnaires nonstop, and we look at them by lawyer, we look at them by week, we look at them by month, we trend line these things. And all of this goes on to a dashboard, or we can watch what goes on by the day, we can watch by the week. And so we just sit down as a management team and go through our scorecard. We're looking very carefully at those trend lines, right? Where are we succeeding? Why are we succeeding? Let's do more of that. Where are we failing? Where are things going downhill? We have a problem. What do we need to fix that? What's the solution? Let's get all over that and make that better. And you're just in a constant state of tweaking these things. That old adage that if you don't know what your data is, then it's not being managed, right? And that's really critical.
If you don't measure it, you can't measure it. You can't improve it.
That's exactly right. And I'll give you a little example of that. During Thanksgiving, suddenly our number of new cases coming in crashed. I mean, like the first time in years, we went a week without taking on a single new case, and yet we still had dozens and dozens of cases calling in. So I sit down to my staff, like the management team, guys, we got a problem. What's going on here? Like, I don't know. We'll sit down at the teams and we'll find out what's going on. They sit down at the teams and they come back beginning of week 2, and they say the calls just aren't any good. I'm like, come on. Traditionally, we take in at least 20, if not 25% of every week's calls. How come we're at 0? Another week goes by and we're still at 0. I know now we have something that's really terrible going on in my office, although I don't know what it is. And so my marketing team, like, guys, what's going on here? And like, well, we think maybe you have a commercial that sucks, Patrick. Like, well, let me hear the commercial. So they run the commercial, it's on the air. And I thought it was a great commercial when we made it, but all it really said was, hey, I'm Patrick Pallas, and I listen to everybody's calls, and I'll answer whatever questions you have. Just call me. And that's what happened. Nobody called with cases. They just called with questions. So we kicked out that commercial like at noon that day and created a new commercial over the Thanksgiving weekend. And when we opened up on Monday, we just got flooded. I mean, I think we took on more new cases in that first 2 days than we'd taken on in the last 4 weeks combined, just by creating a new commercial. So watching those analytics and watching your trend lines and then solving problems is really critical, I think, to keeping your firm headed on the right direction and watching what goes on. In years past, I was like, well, it's Thanksgiving. These things come and go. Just sit tight. We'll get more cases coming in when the holiday's over, blah, 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 right? Would have missed the ball altogether. Today, when you watch those analytics so very, very tightly, you can see these problems long before they get to critical mass.
So I'm going to apologize to you in advance because this information is so amazing and so helpful that I have a sense that people are going to be calling you, asking you questions. So let me just apologize for that in advance.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I take calls all the time. I'm running around the country talking about these things. I really think that if I have something that can help somebody, I'm glad to share.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. This is absolutely amazing information.
I have one more thing to ask.
Get in there, Kelly.
Guy is normally the skeptic on the podcast, or the cynic.
I can't even be a skeptic about this stuff. I can't even do it.
I can. Here's what I want to know. I'm thinking, I'm a solo or small firm owner, and I'm like, yeah. This is so great that you have all of these analytics, but how long did that take to put into place? And how much effort did you have to do to be able to do that? And how the heck did you do that while still running a firm and taking and figuring out and having cases?
Yeah, one day at a time, but it came together really quickly. I was the president of the Washington State Bar, and so I spent my president-elect year, my president year, running around the state and parts of the country, talking about technology and the changes in the profession, all the things people ought to do, but wasn't doing anything in my office. I didn't have time. And so as soon as I came off being president, I sat down and I said, guys, we have some real work to do. Roll up your sleeves. And I pushed away my pleadings. I pushed away my depositions, and I just started working on process, started forming a game plan for what we need to do and how to start doing it. And then I needed people to do it because I'm not a tech expert. I'm a goddamn lawyer, right? So we started looking out, and the first 4 hires we made were people outside of law. In fact, I didn't want any legal experience. I didn't want anybody thinking like a lawyer or giving me their lawyer history information. Forget it. So we brought in somebody to be a project manager. And we said, you need to start helping us manage these projects and finding ways to get them done. And that really was a critical hire. We brought in somebody from the tech industry who had done nothing but customer service. And we said, how can we transform our firm so that customers really get a seamless experience, so that the way that customers see us is easier? How can we transform the way that people get to find us and talk with us and our system? And then can you help us put some analytics together? And so just simply grabbing a free Google Sheet and creating our questions for intake was the beginning of all of that. And it's just continued to roll from there. But critical to the beginning of this, step away from your pleadings. You can't just practice law full time and expect these things to happen. It's got to be a priority of your firm. It's got a priority of your management team. And then it starts to go.
Whew, that is gold right there. Guy, did I do a good job at being the skeptic and taking over that role?
Absolutely. No, and I think that the way that Patrick responded was excellent. I mean, I think for so many lawyers, a real starting point, unfortunately, for many, at least the ones that I tend to talk to, is thinking about your practice as a business, right? So like the whole idea of we're actually going to think about things like client service. We're going to think about things like taking client feedback and learning and iterating, collecting data, applying what we're learning, and that kind of lean startup methodology and applying it to law practice. Like Patrick's they're the gold, in my opinion, gold standard on how to do this stuff. And again, just feel so fortunate, fired up, motivated. We're recording this on a Friday. I'm like going into the weekend being like, oh my goodness, can't wait for this episode to come out. And again, feel so bad that everybody's going to be inundating Patrick with questions.
Can I add one more piece to this too? It's a small piece. And I just think so many people get caught up in taking phone calls all day from their clients who have questions and concerns and problems. And I tell my clients sometimes, if I'm talking to you on the phone, I'm probably not working on your case, right?
Great point.
You don't have any authority to make your case forward. So we started creating this whole process around this idea that if you create a big enough customer feedback loop, you don't need customer service. And consequently, you don't really need to take phone calls because nobody's calling. If you have a big feedback loop, calls go away, lawyers can do their work, clients are more satisfied. We put as many tools in place in every juncture of our practice so that people don't call us, and we get tons of data back on how to make them happier and how to do our jobs better.
Brilliant.
All fabulous. Well, Patrick, I desperately hope that I soon get to make my dream come true of doing yoga with you.
Yes. Yes.
And apart from that...
And drink wine.
And drink wine. Yes. Well, I've already had some of your wine. Shout out, if you aren't familiar with Patrick's wine, Sunken Cellars. It is incredible.
You're so good, Kelly. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
We'll put a link in the show notes for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again, Patrick. This was a delight, as always, talking to you.
You guys are awesome. Thank you for inviting me on. Thanks for having this conversation. Love this show and very happy to be on it. Thank you so much.
Patrick, thanks again. And for listeners, as always, if you have topics, suggestions, feedback, we want to hear from you. If you want to be a guest, we're happy to have you. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.